Hi, this is Janet making the photo, and today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm a little bored tonight. I've been working on some prompt videos for you, giving you some really interesting prompts to play with. But I thought tonight what I'd do is give you one prompt and show you all the different ways you can change it up in Midjourney. We're going to do this prompt, this short little prompt. It's in an upcoming video. Shibori is a type of Japanese tie-dye. Tessellations, that's intricate patterns that fit together, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. We're going to use some parameters tonight. I'm going to show you a couple of parameter tricks that will probably break your prompt. For this experiment, I will find the seed. We will try keeping the seed the same so you can see exactly what some of these are doing. If you don't know about the seed, AI image generators work by taking your prompt, so the Shibori fish tessellations, and mixing it with a random seed. And that's a random image. And every time you run a prompt, you get a different seed. So if we take this Shibori fish tessellations and just run it again, because it's going to take a different seed this time, we're going to get different images. You know what? I'm going to turn on turbo for tonight. This will speed us up a little bit. But I am going to find the seed because sometimes it's good to keep the seed the same. And if you send yourself a message, an envelope, and then click on your messages, you will find a seed. And if you copy that, we will use that tonight. So the first time I ran the prompt, I get a certain set of images. But if I simply run it again, I'm going to get a different set of images along the same lines, but a different set of images. So if you've not tried this, if you just run the prompts once, and that doesn't have to be in Midjourney, in any AI image generator, just try running the prompt a couple of times. You're going to get a different seed every time, and that's going to change up your images. Now I am going to keep the seed the same just to show you. And in Midjourney, so if I keep the seed the same, we should expect to see very similar, if not the exact same images. If I run this again, I will get exactly the same image. Another way to change up, so this is the set of images we're looking at here, if we keep the seed the same. Another thing, if you want more variety, if you haven't played with chaos, you should definitely be playing with chaos. Chaos is going to give you a lot of variety in your 4 images. And I like Chaos 35 or Chaos 50. Chaos goes up to 100, but usually 35 or 50 will give me a diverse set of images. So with one prompt, change the chaos parameter, you're going to get a different type of image. In fact, you'll see we're not even getting the same sort of images. So these are the images. But adding turbo or adding chaos, we get very different kinds of images. Chaos is the parameter that talks about variety. You're asking for more variety. So I've asked for Chaos 50, which gives me a lot more variety. If I do this just without the seed, okay, so we get some very different looking images if we use the chaos parameter. Now another thing you can do, I'm going to pick one of these images to upscale. I'm going to upscale this one. Another way you can get very different images is by using the vary region. Now vary region, I have a whole video on vary region. Vary region allows you to change elements of your image. If I go in here and I say I would like, say, another fish here, drag here, and I want the same thing, I just want more fish. Click generate, and it's going to hopefully fill in that gap with more fish. So it did in fact give me more fish in this little gap here. But if I go back here to this original very region, but instead of just selecting this one little area here to fill in, I select everything, keep my prompt the same, haven't changed the prompt yet. I'll leave the seed, I'll leave the aspect ratio, hit generate again. I'm going to get some very different images. And that's because the very region area, the very region server uses a different algorithm to produce images. So if you want to kick in this different algorithm, select very region, select the entire image, and then just run the prompt again. It's going to use a different algorithm, and you're going to get very different looking images. So we've been working with seeds. Let's copy that seed again, and that prompt again. And that's the seed I pulled from the original image that I ran. But you don't have to keep the seed. You can prompt any seed you want. And I have no idea how high that is, but that is my understanding, that is the highest seed you can go. So if we copy our prompt in, put the highest seed we can use in there. Let's see what we get. So if we had seed 0, it does change the prompt quite a bit, the output quite a bit. We're still getting some tessellations, we're still getting some fish. Now, when you joined this video and you saw weird in the title, you probably thought I was going to do the weird parameter, and I am going to do the weird parameter. So we're going to run weird 0, but then let's run weird 1000. Now, weird, the documentation basically says it makes your images weird. So that's not very helpful to understand. It just, and it depends on your prompt how weird and how different it gets. But it is going to do something to your prompt if you start adding higher weird numbers. So here's weird 0, which looks very similar to our first prompt. And here's weird 1000, which is very different look than our weird 0 prompt. But now let's push the boat out a little bit and let's do weird 3000. Now there's a lot of people playing with this. Midjourney itself, the team says weird 3000 is just maybe even too weird. Weird uses a different server, I think, so it definitely has a different look. And you'll see some of these images don't even have the tessellations. It kind of starts ignoring your prompt, but you might get some really interesting looks. And weird 3000 starts getting very different. So here's weird 0, here's weird 1000, and here's weird 3000. The Midjourney team also suggests that you use weird with stylize. And stylize is a measure of beauty. It goes from 0 to 1000. The higher the number, the more beautiful you want your image. The lower your stylized number, the more you really want Midjourney to pay attention to your prompt. So if we do weird, I think stylized default is 100. So if we go up to weird 1000 and stylize 1000, stylize and weird have a kind of a relationship, but it's not a fixed relationship. It kind of depends on your prompt, and it depends on how those two parameters are interacting. So on some prompts, weird 100 might be very weird. On other prompts, weird 100 won't be that weird at all. So you do have to try different varieties of weird, and then to add the stylize parameter, the different values of stylize between 0 and 1000, and you'll find that they interact. While we're waiting for that, we're going to run just stylize on its own. If we just run stylize 1000 on its own, we'll see, be able to see a comparison with and without weird. I'm going to kick this prompt one more time. It doesn't seem to want to run. And I am on turbo mode, so it should be running. So this is the result for Stylize 1000 without the weird parameter. So you'll see it becomes very beautiful, but it's not necessarily paying attention to my prompt. For instance, it's pretty much ignoring the tessellations part of the prompt. Okay, and so here is the Stylize and weird together at 1000. So it's different than just weird 1000 on its own. Let's take the weird up to 3000 while we're here and see what happens. We'll leave Stylize at 1000 and go weird 3000 and see what happens. So you can play with just these 3 words and you can get almost an infinite number of different kinds of looks. We do have some different patterns on our fish, some nice tessellations, but they're very different from what we've gotten before. Now I'm showing you style 4, version 4, because I do want to show you the style cursed, because style cursed is sort of where weird comes from. So instead of style 4A and 4B, instead type style cursed. And it is a very strange style. So you can play with style 4A, 4B, and you may actually find something you like in version 4. Even version 3 had its look, had its aesthetic. And there are a lot of people who like version 3. Let's just run that while we're running it. Style cursed is a very strange style. It's meant to be sort of bad art. And you'll see a lot of like low res artifacts, that sort of thing will show up. So you might like that glitchy look. So again, we're only using 3 words here. We've used the same prompt and what we've run it now, I don't know, 20 times. And we're getting different results every time we run it. And now I'm running it in version 3. Just to give you some perspective. Version 3 is much simpler, and it doesn't necessarily know all of the words that version 5 knows. So we'll find out if it knows tessellations. It does seem to, and it does seem to know what shibori is. And we do have kind of a tie-dye effect. Like with weird, the weird parameter, style cursed is also affected by the stylize parameter. So if we put stylize 1000 in and style cursed, it does affect what that style cursed looks like. So there's almost an infinite number of permutations you can play with. You can play with the weird parameter, you can play with version 4 style cursed, and in both of those situations, the stylize parameter is going to change up things quite a bit. Okay, there you go. So now you think you've seen some weird stuff, and you probably have. But here, let's go back. We're keeping the seed the same. Let's go back to version 5.2, so the current version. But let's use the no parameter. Now the no parameter tells Midjourney what you don't want to see. Now I've talked about the no parameter in other videos, and it sometimes works. So if you're trying to get rid of text in your image, if you write no text, then sometimes it will take text out. But sometimes that no parameter will actually seems to put more text in. So you can use the no parameter. It's like a negative weight. And if you put no and then something random, like shibori fish tessellations, no cats. Now there's no reason that Midjourney would have put cats in. We've not seen any cats. But if I put the no parameter in and then put no cats, it is going to affect what Midjourney does with the image. The no parameter does have an effect on the final output. Usually we use no because we've seen something in our image we want to get rid of. But if you use the no parameter and put in something random, something you haven't seen, it does make different images. We haven't seen these images before. There are no cats, but there weren't any cats before. Okay. Now if you want to be a little bit stranger, we can put the no parameter in, but we're going to put something in that Midjourney is not expecting. Shibori fish tessellations, no fish. Now let's see what it's going to do. We've asked for fish. Now we've said no fish. Yeah, Midjourney might be scratching its head wondering what we're doing. Again, if you are having problems, if something gets stuck, just try rerunning it. So we're getting very different images now because we've asked for no fish. There's now no fish. We still get some idea of fish. We're still getting some of the scales. And then Midjourney is putting in some other sorts of patterns that it thinks we might like instead of fish. But what if we take it one step further? No fish, no tessellations. So no patterns, no fish. Okay, so Shibori is the only thing we're leaving in there. Okay, you can with most of these parameters, if you double up on the parameters. So with most parameters, you can't put in double. Well, you can put in double. It's not going to give you an error, but it will only take the first one. So if I put aspect ratio 3:2 and also aspect ratio 16:9, Midjourney will only take the first one of those. Okay? So with a lot of the parameters, it will just take your first parameter and then just ignore the rest. But with no, it will take a couple of no's. And it really does, you'll see, mess up what the prompt is. You've broken your prompt. Okay, so we don't have any Shibori, we don't have any fish, and we don't have any tessellations. It's a lot more like the weird look that we were asking for with the weird parameter. Has more in common with that. So doubling up on the nose can give you some very different looks. We're going to take this one step further, as if we could. No fish, no tessellations, but let's zero out everything. We're going to put our seed at 0, and we're going to put stylize at 0. And thank you, Ordered Entropy, for suggesting that we zero out everything for a very weird look. So this 0, oh, you know what? I didn't do that right, did I? I wanted seed at 0. I didn't zero out my seed. Although just zeroing out the stylize worked. We got a very different, very weird sort of look. But if I zero out the seed as well, which is what I intended to do, again, we're getting things that are looking a lot more like we would expect by using the weird parameter. Now, if you want to know about, I'm going to use some multi-prompts here. Now, if you want to know more about multi-prompts, I have a whole video on multi-prompts. Let's take out these no parameters. So the multi-prompts are these double colons. And what it does is it breaks your prompt down. And Midjourney is going to do each one of these separately. So it just depends on where you put the double colon. So if I put it double colon here, then Midjourney will make this image first, Shibori fish, and then it will make a tessellations image, and then it will add those together. So if you start messing around with where you put your multi-prompts, Midjourney is treating each of these words very differently. It treats it very differently from the commas, or if you're using other sorts of dividers. So you can play with multi-prompts, change where the multi-prompts are. So in this case, Midjourney ran Shibori, it ran fish, and it ran tessellations as separate prompts, and then put them together right before it gave you the result. So you look at, we were getting some very different images, some very scary fish there. But if I change where the multi-prompt is, so now let's go back to this Shibori fish. So now we only have two parts to our prompt, Shibori fish and tessellations. Now, even though I've kept the seed the same, we're going to get a very different look. So by using some double colons, keeping your prompt the same, you can very much change up the look. And I know you guys are probably running prompts that are much longer than the one I'm showing you here. So think of all the different places and all the different divisions you can use, you can make with those multi-prompts. So in a normal sized prompt with, I don't know, 10 or 20 words, there are dozens of different places you could put the multi-prompt. And they don't have to make logical sense. Just stick them in there and see what happens. Now, if you want to up the weirdness, now one of the things you should know about the multi-prompts is multi-prompt, basically this multi-prompt equates to this. The default multi-prompt, the default weight for a multi-prompt is 1. And if you don't put anything after the multi-prompt, it treats it as a 1. And then by default, Midjourney treats the end, the last multi-prompt like this. Okay, but you can change the weight. So you can add more weight to that one and less weight to that one. And again, I have a whole video on multi-prompts and how to use those multi-prompts. But what I really want to show you, so I'm going to let this one run, but what I really want to show you is that you have to have a positive number. So if I have 2 here and a -2, okay, it's going to, basically what we have is 2, a weight of 2 for the shibori fish and a weight of -2 for the tessellations. When you start getting close to 0, it is going to start giving you some very strange results. And you'll see this is a very different looking fish than we've ever gotten before. It's kind of shibori in that it's ink and kind of tie-dye, but it's very different than we've seen. So the reason we're getting that is because our weights are very close, and in this case, they are 0. You could do, remember, we're keeping the seed the same. So if I did 1 and -2, it's not going to run it. Okay, because they have to be 0, it has to be a positive number. And in this case, it's letting me do 0 as a positive number. But if I get close to 0, so if I do 1 and -0.9, so that's close to 0, that's when we start getting the very strange looks. So playing with multi-prompts will give you some very different looks, but weighting the multi-prompts close to 0 will also give you some very different looks. Oh, I'm kind of liking those fish. It's kind of a cool liquid effect. Now, I've already gone through the describe tool. You know I like the describe tool. You know that if you upscale one of these images, like this new fish I like so much, save the image, okay, and then use the describe tool. I have a whole video on this. In fact, I may have more than one video on this because I love to do this. Drag in the fish again and get Midjourney to describe to you what it's seeing. Okay, so this is what it's seeing. And so it's making some very different prompts that, we know how we got there, but obviously it's trying to describe what it's seeing. And you can imagine you can run all 4 of those prompts, and you're going to get some very different looks. Some of them might be kind of close to your fish. Other will be very different. But if you also go here, you are now in the remix mode, and you can change something you want or simply submit. And this is what happened when I ran it in the remix mode. So I hit, instead of Imagine All, I hit the 1 button to run this prompt here. So I will get a different look. So this is 1 if I just ran it on its own, and then 1 if I ran it as part of the group. So they are slightly different. And lastly, I think this is maybe 19 or 20 different ways to change up your prompt. Take the words in your prompt, and again, I'm only using 3 words, so I'm not working with very much, but start changing them around. Now, sometimes this doesn't make a difference to Midjourney. Sometimes it doesn't care what order your words are. And sometimes it makes a huge difference. And again, if you're using a prompt that is longer than 3 words, then you have much more to work with. You can even randomize the words, just stick them into ChatGPT and ask it to randomize the words in your prompt. Sometimes it will favor the first word in the prompt. Sometimes it will interact, the words will interact differently if they're in a different order. They don't even have to make logical sense. Just start moving them around and changing the order. And you'll see subtle changes, and in some cases very major changes to the output. So I hope you enjoyed this very different kind of making the photo. If it gave you a creative spark, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know if you like this informal but longer video type. This is Jen from Making the Photo. Let's make something amazing together.